Maya had never planned to stay long in the small countryside town. The kind of place where the roads were lined with wooden fences and the air smelled like hay even before sunrise. She came only as a temporary helper for a traveling horse trainer who needed an extra pair of hands. Maya loved animals, especially horses, but she didn't expect much excitement from the assignment. She imagined long days, quiet nights, and maybe a little boredom mixed in. What she didn't expect was to meet someone who would stay in her thoughts long after she left. On her third morning in town, the sun was just beginning to warm the dew-covered fields when she walked into the stables with a bucket of feed. She was humming softly, feeling peaceful in the early hour. But in her calmness, she didn't notice a thin layer of spilled grain on the ground. As she stepped forward, her boots slid, and she lost her balance. The bucket flew out of her hands, tipping the feed all over the floor as she fell. Before she could hit the ground, a strong arm caught her by the elbow. A quiet voice said, "Careful there, steady and gentle." Maya blinked, startled, and looked up to see a man she hadn't met before. He wore worn-in jeans, dusty boots, and a shirt that looked like it worked as hard as he did. His hat was pulled low, but not low enough to hide the warm, calm eyes studying her with concern. "Thanks," she said, embarrassed as she straightened herself. "Guess I wasn't paying attention." He gave a small, easy smile. "Happens to everyone." He bent down and helped gather the bucket. "You new around here?" Maya nodded. "Just for a few weeks, helping out while the trainer travels." "Oh, welcome," he said. "I'm Cole." He tipped his hat slightly in a polite gesture that felt old-fashioned in a charming way. She introduced herself, and for a moment they stood there as if neither quite knew how to end the conversation. Then one of the horses nickered loudly, and Cole turned toward it. "Looks like Lucy's impatient for breakfast," he said with a soft laugh. "I better get back to my work before she starts complaining." Maya smiled. "Good luck with that." Cole walked off, but as he did, he glanced back once, just a small glance, quick and quiet. Maya felt something stir in her chest, something unsure but pleasant. She brushed it away. It was just a polite cowboy, she told herself. Nothing more, but that wasn't the last time she saw him. In fact, the town was small enough that it seemed almost like fate kept throwing them together. Later that week, she visited the local feed store to restock supplies. She struggled to lift a heavy bag of pellets, trying to get it onto her cart. Before she could manage it, a familiar voice said, "Mind if I help?" She turned to find Cole again, his expression soft but amused. Like he expected her to say no, but hoped she wouldn't. "Please," she said, stepping aside. He lifted the bag with little effort and placed it on her cart. "Thanks," she said again. It was the second time in a row he'd stepped in when she needed help. "You sure you're working with horses and not wrestling them?" He teased lightly. His eyes held a playful sparkle that made her laugh. "I can handle horses. It's the bags of feed that are trying to take me down." "Oh." He chuckled. "Those bags don't know who they're messing with." They talked for a minute or two more. Nothing serious, but enough to leave Maya walking out of the store with a warm feeling she didn't quite understand. Their paths crossed again and again, each time in a way that felt natural but meaningful. Once, at the farmer's market, where Maya bought fresh apples and Cole commented that horses seemed to love them almost as much as people did. Another time during a town event where locals danced to country music and shared homemade desserts. Cole didn't dance, but he stood near the edge of the crowd, watching quietly, his hat pushed back just enough to see his whole face. Maya waved when their eyes met, and he gave that same small, warm smile that had become familiar. It wasn't just his looks or easy manners that caught her attention. It was something deeper, something about the steady way he spoke, the way he listened, like he actually cared, the way he never rushed anything. Maya had met enough people in her life to know when someone was pretending to be charming. Cole wasn't pretending. He was simply kind. And that, she realized, was far more rare than charm. Still, nothing dramatic happened between them. No big declarations, no sudden spark that threw them into some whirlwind. It was quieter than that. Softer. Their conversations were simple, but sincere. Leaving Maya thinking about him long after they said goodbye, When her assignment ended a few weeks later, she felt a small ache in her chest she didn't expect. She found herself wishing she could stay just a little longer. She wondered if Cole might ask her to. Not directly, maybe, but in some way that would make it clear he didn't want her to leave. On her last afternoon in town, she saw him again near the stables. She was packing equipment into the truck when he walked up, hands in his pockets, looking as though he had something he wanted to say, but couldn't quite figure out how to start. "So you're heading out soon?" he asked. "Yeah," she replied softly. "Tomorrow morning?" He nodded. "It was nice having you around." He said it simply like a fact. "It was nice being here," she said. "I liked this place more than I expected." Cole hesitated. Then he reached into his pocket and pulled out a small slip of paper. "Here," he said, handing it to her. "My number. Just in case you want to keep in touch," the way he said it. Calm but meaningful, told her he hoped she'd use it. She smiled and tucked the paper into her jacket. "I'll call you," she promised. He gave her that quiet, gentle smile she had come to like too much. "I'll be around," he said. And then he walked off, tipping his hat lightly before heading toward the pasture. That night, Maya lay in her temporary room, looking at the paper with his number. She wondered if he truly expected her to call, or if he only offered out of politeness. But the way he'd looked at her— no, that wasn't politeness. That was something else. Something real. She fell asleep imagining what might happen if she reached out, if maybe, just maybe, they could keep talking. Keep whatever this small connection was growing between them alive. The next morning, she drove out of the little town with the sun rising behind her. She glanced at the ranch one last time and whispered to herself, "He said he'll be in touch." She believed it. She carried that hope with her for days. She checked her phone every so often, not obsessively, but with a quiet anticipation. She imagined Cole calling her in the evening, asking about her drive or sending a short message just to check in. She imagined his calm voice on the other end of the line. Maybe even the little laugh she had started to look forward to, but the call never came. Not that day, not the next, not the one after that. A week passed. Then two, and slowly, that warm, hopeful feeling inside her turned into uncertainty. She wondered if he was simply too busy, or if she had misunderstood his quiet nature. Maybe she had read into things that weren't there. Maybe she had only imagined the connection. Yet the memory of how he looked at her, how he listened, how he held her arm gently that first morning, it didn't feel like something she had imagined. And although she tried to move on and focus on her own work and routine, a small part of her kept waiting. Because hope, once it settles into your heart, doesn't leave easily. She thought about calling him first, but something held her back. She didn't want to seem too forward or desperate. If he wanted to reach out, he would. Cowboys, she thought, weren't the type to play games. But as the days stretched into weeks, her thoughts began to shift. What if he didn't call because something happened? What if he thought she wouldn't want to hear from him? What if her silence was the thing stopping him? By the end of the 4th week, she couldn't keep pretending it didn't bother her. She cared more than she wanted to admit. And no amount of talking herself out of it could erase the heavy feeling in her chest. One quiet evening, sitting alone in her room, Maya looked at her phone and finally admitted the truth. She needed to know. She couldn't keep waiting without understanding why he had disappeared from her life so suddenly. With a deep breath and a shaky thumb, she opened her messages. She typed slowly, thoughtfully, choosing her words with care. She didn't want to sound angry. She didn't want to sound sad. She just wanted the truth. When she hit send, she didn't know what answer she would get. If she would get one at all. But she knew one thing for certain. Her story with Cole wasn't finished yet. The first few days after Maya left the small country town, she tried to keep herself busy. She threw herself into her work, spent extra time helping at the stables near her home, and even tried to convince herself that she wasn't thinking about Cole as much as she truly was. But every time her phone buzzed, her heart jumped before she could stop it. Each time, it wasn't him. At first, she laughed it off. He'll call when he gets a moment, she told herself. She knew life on a ranch was busy. Early mornings, long days, chores that didn't wait for anyone. She tried to picture his routine and convince herself that maybe he was just tired at the end of each day. Maybe he needed time to settle things before reaching out. But as the days passed, the excuses began to feel thinner and thinner. Maya was an honest person with herself, and honestly, she was waiting. She didn't want to admit it out loud, not even in her own mind, but she was waiting for one person, just one dot. Every morning, she checked her phone before getting out of bed. Every night, she checked it again before going to sleep. She didn't expect paragraphs or long calls. Even a short "Hey, how are you?" would have meant the world. But nothing came. One morning, after about 10 days, she sat on the edge of her bed and let out a slow sigh. Maybe I imagined everything, she whispered to herself. Maybe he was just being polite. Maybe I read too much into small things. But even as she said the words, she didn't believe them. Maya wasn't the type to build stories in her head. She noticed real things like the way Cole kept glancing at her when he thought she wasn't looking. The way he seemed shy when handing her his number. The way he always took a moment before saying goodbye as if he wanted to say more. Those moments were real. She felt them. So why was he silent now? Her friends tried to comfort her. When she met a couple of them for coffee, they listened as she shared her confusion. Maybe he's just not the calling type, one friend suggested. Maybe he lost your number, another said. Or maybe, Maya said quietly, maybe I just wasn't as special to him as I thought. They all reassured her that wasn't the case, but no matter what they said, doubt was slowly settling inside her. Doubt was heavier than disappointment, heavier than confusion. It was the feeling that maybe she had cared more than she should have. Still, she didn't delete his number. She didn't try to forget. Something inside her refused to let go. It wasn't love, she knew that. Couldn't fall in love with someone after a few moments and brief conversations. But it was something. Something gentle, something hopeful, something that whispered, wait, there's more to this. By then. Waiting became a part of her daily rhythm. She waited without meaning to. She waited when she picked up her phone after feeding the horses. She waited when she drove home from work. She waited when she lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering where she stood in the quiet space between them. Sometimes she felt silly. Why was she waiting for someone she barely knew? Why did she care so much about a cowboy she met by accident in a small town? She didn't have an answer. All she knew was that she wasn't the kind of person who felt connections easily. So when she did feel one, she didn't dismiss it. But there were moments when frustration bubbled up inside her. Moments when she felt Cole had been unfair to her heart. He had given her his number. He had smiled at her like she mattered. He had encouraged her to keep in touch. And then he disappeared. It didn't feel right. Didn't feel like him. That thought, that tiny confusion, was what kept her from letting go. One evening, she sat outside on her porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in pink and orange shades. She held her phone loosely in her hand, running her thumb over the screen without unlocking it. A warm breeze brushed her hair, but her heart felt heavy. I should have heard from him by now, she whispered. If he cared at all, anything at all, we would have reached out. But another thought followed, quiet but strong. What if he wanted to, but something stopped him? What if he wasn't ignoring her, but struggling with something she didn't know about? The not knowing was the worst part. The silence was starting to hurt, not painfully, but in a slow, draining way. Like a light inside her was fading a little each day. Not because she expected big promises or dramatic romance, but because she believed in respect, honesty, and communication. And she believed Cole did too, or at least she thought he did. By the 5th week, Maya reached a point she couldn't avoid anymore. She needed an answer, not for drama, not for closure, and not to push him into anything. She simply needed the truth. Her mind kept circling the same question. Why didn't he call? It wasn't a question she wanted to wonder about for the rest of her life. That evening, she sat down on her bed with her knees pulled close, her phone in her lap. Her heart thudded softly in her chest, not from fear, but from longing. She didn't want to pressure him. She didn't want to sound upset. She didn't want to ruin whatever small connection they had made. She just wanted clarity. She opened her messages and stared at the blank screen. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She didn't know how to start, how to phrase the words without sounding desperate. She wanted to be light, simple, honest. She typed one sentence, then deleted it. Typed at another, deleted it again. She tried at least 10 different drafts before settling on the simplest one, the one that felt most like her. The one that wouldn't hide her disappointment or pretend she didn't care. She took a deep breath and wrote, "Hey, Cowboy, it's been a while. I hope you're okay. I just wanted to ask, did you forget about me? Or did I miss something?" She read the message 3 times. It wasn't accusing, wasn't dramatic. It was soft, honest, and brave in a quiet way. It carried the truth of her heart without forcing anything onto him. She stared at it for a long moment. Her pulse quickened. Breath felt tight. She knew that once she pressed send, she couldn't take it back. But she also knew she couldn't keep waiting like this, lost between hope and confusion. With one small tap, she sent the message. Her heart jumped instantly. She locked her phone and placed it beside her on the bed, refusing to stare at it, refusing to overthink. She stood up, walked to the window, and took a long breath of the cool evening air. Minutes passed, then more minutes. She tried to distract herself, pacing, brushing her hair, straightening the books on her shelf. She told herself not to check her phone too soon, not to rush, not to expect anything. But after 30 minutes, that felt like hours. She finally picked up her phone. Still nothing. Her chest tightened a little, but she didn't give up. Not yet. She carried her phone with her as she went to make dinner, checking it every few minutes. She tried to act normal, but inside she was restless. She kept wondering what he would say if he said anything at all. Maybe he would apologize. Maybe he would explain. Maybe he would tell her something she didn't expect. Or maybe he wouldn't answer at all. That possibility made her heart ache more than she wished it would. Hours passed. The sun went down. The house grew quiet. Maya tried to sleep, but every time she closed her eyes, she imagined her phone lighting up. She imagined his name appearing on her screen. She imagined hearing his voice again. In the quiet darkness of her room, she whispered softly, "Please say something, even if it's nothing special. Just don't leave me hanging." Her eyes grew heavy, but her mind stayed awake with hope's small, stubborn hope. Then, just when she was drifting between sleep and waking, her phone VIBR, a message. Her heart stopped for a moment, then it raced. She grabbed the phone, hands trembling slightly, breath caught in her throat. Her eyes widened. It wasn't a message. It was a call that Cole was calling her. After more than a month of silence, he was finally reaching out, and everything she had felt, feared and hoped for, suddenly collided in one breathless moment. When Maya saw Cole's name glowing on her phone screen, her breath caught somewhere between surprise and relief. For a moment, she didn't move. Her hand hovered above the phone, her heart pounding so loudly that she could almost hear it in the quiet room. She had waited more than a month for this. She had imagined this moment so many times, but now that it was happening, she suddenly felt unsure. What was he going to say? Why now? Why after all this time? Her thumb finally slid across the screen, and she lifted the phone to her ear. "Hello?" Her voice came out softer than she expected, almost a whisper. "Maya?" Cole's voice filled the line, warm but nervous. She could tell immediately that he wasn't calling casually. There was something in his tone, something careful, something serious, something heavy. "Yes, it's me," she said, trying to sound calm, even though her heart was racing. "It's good to hear your voice." He let out a slow breath, the kind someone releases after holding it for too long. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. "I know it's been a long time." Maya didn't answer right away. She sat down on the edge of her bed, gripping the phone tightly. She didn't want to interrupt him, not yet. She wanted to hear his truth, whatever it was. He continued, "I got your message. I'm sorry you had to wait that long. You didn't deserve that." She took a breath, steadying herself. "I just wanted to understand," she said honestly. "I wasn't angry. I was confused." "I know," he said softly. "And you had every right to be." There was a pause. Only a few seconds, but enough for Maya to feel the weight of everything unspoken. She imagined him on the other end, Maybe sitting on the porch of his ranch house. Maybe staring at the fields. Maybe running a hand through his hair the way she had seen him do when he was thinking too hard. He finally spoke again. Things got hard here. Harder than I expected. And I didn't want to bother you with any of it. Bother me? She repeated gently. Cole, you wouldn't have bothered me. I would have listened. I know, he said quickly, but I didn't feel right calling you when my mind was all over the place. I didn't want you thinking I wanted something from you that I couldn't give. Maya's chest tightened a little. She could hear the honesty in his voice, the hesitation. The struggle? What happened? She asked quietly. He hesitated, then let out a slow sigh. Right after you left, the ranch ran into a few problems. Some financial things I didn't see coming. Vet bills, repairs, a few things breaking down all at once. I've been working from sunrise until long after dark. Some days I didn't even remember to eat until late at night. Maya felt her heart soften. She knew ranch work was hard. Harder than most people realized. And she could picture him, dusty boots, tired eyes, hands rough from work that never ended. That sounds exhausting, she said gently. I'm sorry you had to deal with all that alone. Cole's voice softened too. It was tough, but that's not the real reason I didn't call. Maya waited, not breathing for a second. The truth is, he continued, I wanted to call you every single day. I'd pick up my phone, think about dialing your number. Then, I'd put it down again. Why? She whispered. Because I felt like I didn't have the right. His voice cracked just the tiniest bit, not sadness, but uncertainty. You're someone special, Maya. Someone who deserves someone with time and peace and a clear mind. I didn't want to pull you into my worries. I didn't want you thinking I was reaching out only because things were falling apart here. Maya closed her eyes. She felt a mixture of emotions, relief, tenderness, and something warm blooming in her chest. She wasn't expecting such honest vulnerability from him. You should have told me, she said softly but sincerely. I wasn't asking you to be perfect. I wasn't expecting big things. I just wanted to hear from you. Even a simple hello. I know, he said, sounding regretful. And I realize now I handled it wrong. I thought staying silent would protect you from my mess. But all I did was leave you waiting. And I hate that. I hate knowing I made you feel forgotten. You didn't make me feel forgotten, she said gently. Just uncertain. And that's worse, he replied. Because you're the last person I want to hurt or confuse. She swallowed, her throat suddenly tight. She wasn't used to men being this open, this thoughtful, this honestly unsure. It touched her more than she expected. Cole, she said after a quiet moment. Yeah. When you gave me your number, did you mean it? Or were you just being polite? There was no hesitation in his answer. I meant it, he said firmly. I meant every word. I wanted you to call. I wanted to stay in touch. I didn't expect to meet someone like you. Honestly, I still don't quite know what to do with the way you make me feel. Maya's heart warmed. She felt her cheeks heat as if he could somehow see her blush through the phone. They stayed silent for a moment that felt soft, like a warm blanket being draped over cold shoulders. Finally, she asked the question she had been holding on to for weeks. The question that had sat quietly in her heart, waiting for the right moment. So, what now, Cole? He was quiet for a moment. Not the uncomfortable kind of quiet, more like a thoughtful one, the kind that meant he wanted to answer her with honesty. Not speed. Well, he said slowly, I want a chance. A real one. If you'll give me that, I want to talk to you properly. I want to make up for the silence. And when things settle down here, which they're starting to, I want to see you again. Maya's fingers tightened around the phone. She felt something gentle unfolding inside her. Something she had been holding back out of fear. I would like that, she said softly. Cole let out a breath that sounded like pure relief. Good, he said. Because I didn't want to lose this. Whatever this is between us. A small smile tugged at Maya's lips. It's something, she said simply. Yeah, he replied. It is. For the next hour, they talked. Not about serious things, not about heavy worries. Just simple conversations, her work, his horses, the weather, the funny things that happened on the ranch, the little details they hadn't had the chance to share before. It felt natural, easy, like they had known each other longer than they actually had, for the first time in weeks. Maya felt the tightness inside her slowly melt away. She felt lighter, brighter, hopeful in a way that didn't scare her anymore. Before ending the call, Cole said, "Maya, yes, thank you for reaching out first. If you hadn't, I might have gone another month too scared to call. You gave me a chance to explain. I won't waste that." Her heart softened. "I'm glad you called," she whispered. After they hung up, Maya sat on her bed, holding her phone to her chest. She felt a mix of relief and warmth spreading through her. His honesty, his quiet, sincere honesty, touched her deeply. It made everything make sense. His silence wasn't rejection. It was fear, responsibility, pressure, but not loss of interest. And now, the story she thought had ended was opening again slowly, gently and beautifully, as she laid back on her pillows. Her last thought before sleep drifted through her mind. Like a soft whisper, he cared. He always cared. He just didn't know how to show it until now. After Maya and Cole's long late-night call, something inside her felt peaceful for the first time in weeks. She slept better that night than she had since leaving the small town. It felt like a heavy cloud had finally moved away from her heart. Cole's honesty, his voice softened by truth and sincerity, stayed with her even after she drifted into sleep. The next morning, she woke up early, the sunlight brushing her room in gentle gold. Instinctively, she checked her phone. This time she didn't feel nervous. She felt excited, and her breath caught softly when she saw a new message waiting from him. "Morning, Maya. I hope you slept well." Just that simple line made her smile. She typed back a warm reply, and within seconds he responded. Their conversation continued through breakfast, through her morning chores, through little breaks in between work. Every message he sent felt thoughtful, not rushed, not forced. It felt like he was finally giving attention to something he should have given attention to from the start. Over the next few days, they spoke even more. Sometimes they called at night, talking about their days, their memories, their worries, their hopes. Sometimes they simply shared quiet moments over the phone, not saying much but still feeling close. The silence no longer felt empty, it felt comfortable. 2 weeks passed that way, 2 weeks of slow healing. 2 weeks of understanding each other better. 2 weeks of building something real, something gentle. One evening, Maya received another message from Cole. "Can I see you soon? I don't want us to stay apart too long." Her heart fluttered. She had been hoping he would ask. She didn't want to rush anything, but distance had made her realize how much she wanted to see him face to face again. How much she wanted to look into his eyes without imagining it through a phone screen. "I would love to see you," she wrote back. They decided she would visit the ranch again the following weekend. It was a long drive, but Maya didn't mind. She liked long drives. They gave her time to think, to dream, to prepare her heart for what was ahead. The night before she left, she couldn't sleep. She kept imagining how he would look when she saw him again. Would he be shy? Would he smile the way he used to? Would he still glance at her with that warm look she had learned to recognize? When morning came, she packed her overnight bag, made herself a cup of coffee, and set out on the road. The drive felt shorter than she remembered, maybe because she wasn't driving away this time. She was driving towards something, towards someone who mattered, as she reached the familiar dirt road leading to the ranch. Her heart began to beat a little faster. The scenery looked just as she remembered. Wide fields, wooden fences, horses grazing in the distance, the soft hum of the wind sweeping over the open land. She slowed her car as she approached. The entrance gated. There he was. Cole stood waiting for her, just like he said he would. His hat was in his hand, his boots dusty, his shirt slightly wrinkled from work. But nothing about him looked tired in that moment. His eyes were bright, hopeful, warm. The kind of warmth that reached straight into her chest. When Maya stepped out of her car, she felt a flutter in her stomach. Cole walked toward her, not quickly, not hesitantly, just steady. like he wanted to take the moment in. "You made it," he said softly. "Of course I did," she replied. Smiling, he let out a breath, almost like he had been holding it the whole time she was driving. "I'm glad you're here." They stood close. Close enough for Maya to notice little details. She had forgotten the faint lines near his eyes from smiling in the sun. The gentle way he held his hat, the slight nervous shift of his boots in the dirt. He wasn't a man of many words, but he didn't need many. His presence spoke enough. For a moment, they just looked at each other. A quiet understanding passed between them, one that didn't need to be spoken. Everything he hadn't said in the past month, everything she had wondered, everything that had been left unfinished. It was all settling into place now. "Come on," he finally said softly. "Let me show you around." They walked side by side through the ranch. He pointed out the horses, the new fence he had worked on, the barn repairs he had been meaning to finish. Maya listened, asking questions, laughing softly when he made little jokes. It felt easy, natural, like picking up a conversation they had paused only minutes ago instead of weeks. At one point, a young horse trotted up to the fence, and Maya reached out to stroke its nose. Cole watched her with a fond expression, one she didn't see but could feel. "You're good with them," he said quietly. She turned to him. "I love them. They're peaceful." "You are too." Maya's breath caught. Her cheeks warmed. Cole looked away, almost shy, but she could tell he meant it. Later, as the sun began to set, they walked toward the pasture where the sky spread open in shades of soft orange and pink. The breeze was gentle, carrying the scent of grass and earth. Cole stopped near the fence and leaned lightly against it. "There's something I want to say," he began. Maya faced him, her heart steady but listening. "I know I messed up," he said quietly. "I should have called. I should have talked to you instead of shutting down. I kept thinking you deserved someone better than a man who didn't have his life in perfect shape." She shook her head gently, but he continued before she could speak. "But these past weeks, talking to you, I realized something. Life doesn't have to be perfect for something good to begin. And you." He paused, his voice softening. "You're something good, Maya." Her eyes warmed. She didn't interrupt him. "I don't know how this will go," he admitted. "I don't know what the future looks like. But I do know this: I want to try. With you? Slowly, honestly, without disappearing again." Maya stepped closer, her voice just above a whisper. "I want that too." Cole looked down for a moment, then raised his eyes, those warm, steady eyes that had stayed in her heart long after she left. "I didn't claim you then," he said gently, "but I'm claiming you now, if you'll let me." Maya felt tears prick her eyes, not from sadness, but from the gentleness of his words, the sincerity of his heart. She reached out and took his hand. His fingers closed around hers, warm and strong. "You didn't lose me," she said softly. "I was waiting." His smile grew, slow and heartfelt, "and I'm grateful for that." They stood together as the sun set behind the pasture, hand in hand, the world quiet around them. There were no dramatic promises, no rushed decisions, just two people choosing each other, slowly, beautifully. Honestly, it wasn't the kind of love story that started with lightning and sparks. It was the kind that grew like a sunrise, soft, steady and warm. And for both of them, that was more than enough.